Okay, so I'm here today at Tail of the Dragon to take my first ride on our new Metacycle, Sondors Metacycle e-bike, electric motorcycle. So this is a street legal electric motorcycle that we pre-ordered about 2 years ago. It was supposed to have shipped like a year later, and they missed their deadline, cut a bunch of corners, and they delivered this product. So I'll go over, for those who aren't familiar with what the bike's about. You know, if you want to skip forward to the actual riding part, that's fine if you're familiar with the bike. But those of you not, when this bike was first introduced, it was $5,000 to buy in, which is what we did. And they, I don't know if the word promised is the right word, but they, stated that the bike has an 80-mile range with an 80 mile per hour capability, not necessarily simultaneously. And it was going to have a hot swappable battery and name brand suspension, name brand brakes. I think it was WP suspension and Brembo sub-brand brakes. And as time went on, they removed this, removed that, and right at the end they removed this swappable battery. So you can take the battery out. It's the big box on the bottom, but it's a process. It was shown to be in videos a quick release thing, and it would pop right out. That's not the case anymore. I haven't driven it extensively yet, just a couple of runs across town, but the range is pretty pitiful. It definitely, I don't see anybody getting 80 miles out of this thing, maybe downhill from Pikes Peak or something, but most people are reporting about 40 to 50 miles range if they're just taking it easy. I'm seeing more like 20 to 30 mile range if I'm hard on it. So you definitely, it's dependent on how you drive it, and of course the weight comes into play and everything too. I'm only 150 pounds. Oh, they also, speaking of weight, they also stated that it would be around 200 pounds, which is what really sold me on this bike. I wanted something, I didn't need a lot of range. I just wanted to be able to ride up to the store 20 miles, make a run across the Dragon 20 miles, and ride back home. So about 60 miles range is all I wanted. More range equals more weight. There's several electric bikes that have more range, but they're pretty heavy. They're like 400 pounds. This bike ended up, they didn't meet their, surprise, surprise, they didn't meet their target for the weight, and it's more like 305 pounds or something like that. I haven't weighed it yet, but it's definitely not in the 200 pound range, and they changed their stats on their page and everything to reflect that, so now it says around 300 pounds. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple. It's got a direct drive motor in the back wheel, which has got pros and cons. It's not the ideal means for delivering torque, but it's got simplicity to it, super quiet. And then other than that, it just rides kind of like a scooter. The brakes are on the front levers. There's no foot controls. It came with some pretty cheesy tires, so I'm gonna go make a run on the Dragon here and see what kind of range it gets as I go from a full charge at the store all the way to the Overlook and back, riding pretty aggressively. There's two modes, there's two drive modes. There's a regular drive mode where it'll go about 60, 65. And then there's a sport mode that you get for like 90 seconds to 2 minutes. And it, delivers more power, more aggressively, and it'll go about 75, 80. So it will pretty much go the speed that they claimed, but the range is definitely not there. So that's the gist of, the bike as it was stated originally and where it's at now. I was hoping for a little bit more range, but a lot of people are sort of disappointed with the range. Some people are okay with the range. They're just going to ride it to work, and it's 15 miles away or something. It only charges on a regular 110 outlet right now, so it's not very fast. It takes about 4 hours. Eventually, they're saying that they're going to have a level 2 charging capability charger, and that will give it a full charge in about 45 minutes to an hour. We've got level 2 chargers here at the store. I was hoping to be able to hot swap this battery and keep a battery at the store, an extra battery basically, and I could ride up, swap the battery, go make a run, maybe swap the battery back in, and then drive home, let it be charging while it's at the store, but that's not happening. And then the slow charging process is also 4 hours wait between runs. It's not really feasible either. So I'm not sure how I feel about it. We're going to go make a run, and I'm just going to drive it in normal mode for this first time and see how it does on a full run across the Dragon, and see how much battery it uses, doing it like that. So come along, let's go for a ride. All right, let's go see how it do. I forgot to check tire pressure, so there's probably too much tire pressure on this thing. We'll see. Now these tires are some Chinese brand, CN or something like that. So I've got some sticky tires on the way. Not that they would do a lot of good today. You can see that there's some salt residue still on the pavement here. So it's pretty chilly out. It's in the high 40s, I guess. So we're starting off with a full charged battery straight off the charger at the store. So we'll see how the range does. Getting used to using the left lever for rear braking, which I honestly barely ever use the rear brakes when I'm riding, even hard. But to remember that that's not a clutch, and don't snatch it in a panic stop or something, is a thing that you have to be aware of. The levers are not really adjustable, I don't think. It's actually a good point. I don't remember getting in there and actually looking and seeing if they had some kind of obscured adjuster, but it doesn't have a real obvious adjustability like most adjustable levers do, where you can do it on the fly while you're riding. There is a little bit of a hop to this thing, and I've heard other people talk about it too. One person discovered that the tires were not properly seated and beat up, so they had to go have their tires remounted. I don't know, it could be something like that on this, but I don't see an obvious issue with the bead to the rim. It could also be that it's a spoked wheel, and spokes are adjustable, and it's possible that they were so hastily assembled that they didn't take that into consideration when they installed the spokes. They didn't align the wheel with the spokes properly, and luckily I've got a friend that knows how to do that. Oh, this must be the BMW. A guy came down and said his wheel fell off. Yeah, there's no rear passenger wheel on that. It came off going around this turn or something, he said. He's lucky he's kept it under control. So I've got Lori behind me with a camera on the Cayman, just kind of following along. Bike feels good. I guess that's what we're here for when you talk about, right? So, I mean, I can't really hustle it real hard around the curves with these tires and this this cold condition that we're dealing with here. But yeah, it's pretty flickable. It has a very low center of gravity, which is not necessarily as positive of a thing as people think it is when it comes to motorcycles. It's not the same as cars. So they did some research back in the 90s with MotoGP bikes and tried to put some low CG stuff into play with them, and they found that it didn't really work out to increase the performance like they thought. And then they kind of realized that there's an axis along, longitudinally, so from the front to the back of the bike, that it moves around as you lean left and right, and it's not down at the tires, it's long, like right under the headlight more or less. So they found that putting the majority of the weight along that axis really helped a lot. This thing has a lot of decel, so it's not supposed to have regenerative braking as I understand it, but maybe it does, I don't know. But if you let off the throttle, it slows down pretty good. Nothing's adjustable like other premium electric bikes. You cannot adjust the throttle acceleration map, and you can't adjust the deceleration amount. But there is a switch that I can push to put it in sport mode that gives it a more aggressive acceleration and a higher top speed, but only for like 90 seconds. They call it sport mode. You push the button and you get about 90 seconds of increased acceleration performance. I don't think it affects the deceleration, and then after 90 seconds you have to let it cool for like a minute or something before you can use it again. So it's a little bit of a disappointment. I can't just leave it in sport mode, even if okay, I get that it drains the battery faster. I don't care, you know what I'm saying? Like if I'm if I want the maximum performance for a full run across this road, for instance, you know, I don't get that. So there's other people looking into replacing the speed controller. It's like a common style of speed controller, I guess. And then we may be able to unlock more potential. There's other people with similar direct drive e-bikes or motorcycles that have, it's not very common for them to have the direct drive motor in the hub like this one. Most of them use a inboard motor with a belt drive or something like that. But there is another bike that has a small hub motor, and it has better performance capabilities than this one. So the argument is that this motor is being held back in order to get more range out of it, and it has the potential to do a lot more, but it's just being held back by the speed controller and the programming, and we can't really adjust that part. So if we can get in there and maybe change some of those things out, then there's potential to do more. We've got some traffic behind us and some traffic in front of us here, so we may pull over up here at this big pull off and sort of give ourselves a little breathing room. So yeah, we'll pull over up here. I'm just going to let them go on for just a second. Let me build up a little gap here. Make sure all the cameras are still rolling. So there's a delay when you give it the throttle, and there's an RPM gauge on this dash that I'm not sure how visible it is on camera, but you have, it's almost like turbo lag or something. You have to sort of get in front of it. It's not the immediacy. It's to keep you out of trouble or whatever. I get it. Again, this, you know, it goes back to being a budget bike. There, you know, it was $5,000 buy-in at the time. Now if you want to buy one, you have to pre-order it. Still, they're like a year or so behind on orders fulfillment apparently, but they're catching up now that they're in production. So now there's $6,500 to pre-order plus shipping delivery thing, which was $700 for us. I assume it's similar, and they send a freight truck out to an address close to yours if they can't get to your location. But yeah, it rides pretty good. It handles pretty good so far. The suspension is kind of stiff. I've got the preload on the rear shock loosened all the way out, and it's not bad for what I want to do. I wouldn't mind it being a little bit softer, but I keep wanting to downshift and stuff. Like going into that turn right there, I would always drop a gear. Which I've ridden electric bikes before. They've always been pretty impressive. Usually felt a little heavy. This one does not feel heavy. It's nice. It flicks around like a lightweight sport bike or a super motard. The hub motor does increase the rotating mass, so it gives you some perceived extra weight. It's about 7 times impact, honestly. So for every pound you add to rotating weight on a motorcycle, it feels like 7 more pounds of static weight. So by adding like a 50 pound or however many pounds heavy that damn motor is, it adds a lot of stability, you could say, in a positive way, but it also makes it a little less flickable. But it doesn't feel that bad. I don't know, it's not that much of an impact, not the 7 times per pound thing. There's a part of me that it's so skinny, I want to just stick my foot out. Like, it feels like riding a super motard or a dirt bike, and if I feel like I might be near the limits and I'm not hanging off with my knee out, then I want to put my foot out and sort of, do it dirt bike style, just in case it starts to slide. I've got a foot that I can put down and sort of stand it up. But so range report, I see like 1 bar has dropped down, so I'm really impressed with that. It'll be interesting to see what it does in sport mode, and once I get some sticky tires on it and I can start really kind of getting on it coming out of the turns. Whoop, there's a peg. So the pegs on this thing are super long for comfort, I guess, and I'm definitely going to be put some shorter pegs on it. I'm probably also going to look into, they make these little relocation brackets for sort of doing rear sets on the cheap. So rear sets, for those who aren't familiar, sort of move the pegs back and up for better clearance, better ground clearance, so you can lean the bike over further. It's a sort of a race bike, sport bike thing. And rear sets are usually custom designed for each motorcycle. They're quite expensive. They're very specific. Most foot pegs on standard motorcycles attach in a pretty standard way with a pin through a hinge, and so there's these devices, these little extensions that you can buy that go into where your peg normally goes into, and then just a little short 10-20 millimeter extension up and back, and then it gives you another spot to mount your pegs into, and it just sort of moves your pegs up and back in a sort of a ghetto way, but it works, and they make them for the Honda Groms and that type of thing. So I'm going to see if I can find some that come close to the pegs on these. It uses a pretty standard peg attachment style, and you should be able to do that and move the pegs kind of up and back. They are kind of low and forward for comfort. I get it. Most people who are buying this bike aren't doing what we're doing with it, and that's fine. But yeah, I'm gonna see what we can do with it as far as, you know, maximizing performance. So I'm just noticing something here. Okay, so it looks like we're down 2 bars. I wish it would give you a percentage. I think there's like maybe 10 bars on here. I don't need to be trying to count bars while I'm driving the tail of the Dragon. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Oh, dude, that's a sketchy place, y'all. Don't pull across the road like that. I wasn't pushing him. We're almost at the Overlook. I didn't really need to get by him. And driving across the road around the exit of a blind turn like that can really end up with some bad results. So yeah, if you're coming here, just a tip, don't drive across the road to get into a pull-off unless you can really see far down the road and it's a really good you know, sight line. But for the most part, it's just a no-no. Alright, so we're here at the Overlook. Surprisingly only 2 bars, although I've had this thing do something weird. Like when I would park it, I would turn it back on and it'd be down like 2 or 3 bars. So I'm gonna keep an eye on that, take note of where it's at right now versus you know, when I get back on it to start it, and then we'll see where it's at when I start it back up. Alright, hang out and answer some questions here. I'm sure I'll get some. It's kind of quiet, needs a pipe. I'm not saving any lives today.